Hey guys, it's Jonathan from Odyssey. Today we're gonna make a video going over how to switch the boiler O-ring. If you ever have a leak and you kind of find out that this is the reason why you have it, a lot of the times it gets sent to the shop, but for some people it's not really a good option. It just takes a lot of time if you're across the world. So this is just a quick little guide on switching that. For this video, we're gonna assume you're starting at this point, which is you've already taken all the covers off, all the side panels. For tools, you only need 2 tools, 3mm Allen key. This is also on the bottom of your machine. You could just use that one. And a little 14mm wrench. It helps if you have a 3mm like ball end Allen key. You don't need it, but it makes your life easier when you're taking out these awkwardly positioned little screws here. And we're also going to use Loxeal. We use 5503. It's food safe. This is good to use in your machine. You don't want to use Loctite for this. You do not want to use Loctite for this, just because we want to keep food safe stuff anywhere where water could potentially make contact. And we're also going to use some Moly Coat just to kind of lubricate the O-ring a little bit. We use the 111 compound. And yeah, we can get started. Cool, so if you're working on a hard surface, it's a good idea to put like a rag or something below it. You don't want to scratch anything. We're working on something soft, so not a big deal here. But I like to start with taking this little kind of lock nut off and just loosening that slowly. And this part is a little bit scary for some people if you're not used to working on machines, but you kind of want to like force this out of this little area. Once that's off, there's the only thing connecting the boiler to this top part is all of these screws. So from here, using your 3mm Allen key, you want to take these off. This is where I say this little ball joint thing comes in handy. Ball 3mm, just because it's a weird angle. You want to keep track of all your screws also. These are the only 2 weird screws, but it's just a good habit to get into, because when you get to this point there's a lot of screws sitting on the side. And you take this off, put it to the side. You just want to make sure you don't lose that O-ring also. And from here, start taking these off on the side. These are going to be a bit tougher, but just go slowly. You don't want to strip any of these. Stripping one of these is probably the most difficult screws to fix, just because they're kind of hugging a wall. Especially this screw back here. This one's a bit weird just because it's behind the fill tube. So you kind of gotta mess around, try and get a good angle. Again, making sure you don't strip anything. And I'm just going to loosen all these and then go at it with the ball 3mm. And I would just go in a star pattern just so these all don't loosen up at the same time and your boiler kind of falls off to the side. And then once you're on this last one, you want to make sure you're holding the boiler. Just because this is the last thing kind of keeping your machine attached. You see it just kind of slides off. Since we're taking this off without trying to take off as little as possible, we want to keep all that wiring nice and organized. So you're just kind of doing this little 180 movement. There's your O-ring. If you have anything like slightly sharp, you can take it off. We have these little tweezers. And just pulling that off. So yeah, this is old, it's worn, it's starting to leak. Here it's a good idea to clean this. We use isopropyl for it. Just because you don't want anything kind of sitting there with that O-ring and maybe causing damage once you tighten things down. Okay, now grab your boiler O-ring. It's going to be a big circle. and you want to molly coat it a bit, you can use a Q-tip. Personally, I just like using my fingers. I just think it's easier. It's going to be a little messy, but you just want to make sure you got good coverage all the way around. Cool, and then you just pop that in. Again, just being careful not to kind of knock this machine over. And you can kind of just clean up this little residue with your cleaning rag. Okay, and then also cleaning this part because it makes contact. This is also a good chance just to look at your boiler, see if you need to run any like descaler or stuff like that. At this point, get your Loxeal, and you don't need to put too much on these. Depending on how early or how late your machine is, these might already kind of have a bunch of Loxeal on it, and you can just kind of clean it off with a rag. The older machines might not have it. We started doing that somewhere along the way, but just put a little bit, and you just want to kind of run it down the thread. So just a little kind of line like that. Then this maneuver gets a little weird, but you want to kind of support that top plate. There's a little notch here for the thermocouple. You want to make sure you're kind of making sure that sits into there so there's no tearing of anything. And I always start with this top one just because that's going to support it all the way. And then using your Allen key, whether you use the ball or the kind of L-shaped one, just tighten that down to like finger tight. Then we're going to do that with the rest of them. So again, just running down that thread. Don't need a ton, just enough to get good coverage, get a good seal. You might need to kind of shift this a little to the left or the right. And just finger tight on all of them for now. Okay. And now's a good time to kind of put this back, so you just pull it out. Make sure this is out the way. And push it in. You might have to like push this front end down a little bit, but don't be too afraid. This is just kind of a steel pipe there. And tightening this down. Don't forget to tighten this, just because if you do forget it, it might not be super obvious that you have a leak, but it's just going to slowly drip out of there once you use the machine. And if you just forgot to do that, it might not be very easy to tell why it's leaking. But you do want to crank this down with a bit of force. You don't want to break anything, but you know, a bit of elbow grease there. Cool. Sometimes when you do this little flip maneuver, your LEDs might pop out. We can put up a little diagram on kind of the 18 pin here so you can follow the wires back in and put these back into place. But luckily that didn't happen here. And from here you take steam mani and you just want to shimmy that back into place. Depending how new or how old this is, you're also going to have this little Teflon gasket. So just remember to put that there if you have it, and if not, no big deal. Just lining up these holes and kind of doing one at a time just so you can make sure that it's in there. Makes it nice and easy. And just finger tight to start with. Okay, now that everything's kind of put together, we can start tightening. I like to start with these two back here, just because you kind of want to make sure this is aligned. So once you're here, kind of just run your finger across this part and making sure this is pretty flat with that boiler piece there. Helps if you kind of put your thumb just to keep it straight. And you just want to go slowly. Once it starts getting hard on one side, continue with the other. And then you kind of want to give it one last like little eighth of a turn And you don't need to Loxeal these back too. You can if you want to, just to be safe, but it's not really required. But all of these 5 on the actual boiler, you do want to. Now we're just gonna go around in like a star pattern, tightening all of these. Okay, and everything's tight. We're kind of back at that starting point. And at this point, sometimes if you put too much Loxeal, you're gonna see it coming out of the tops of these little areas. Don't worry about it too much. The Loxeal that's kind of in the threads is what matters. You can wipe that off with a little rag if it bothers you, but it's just gonna kind of like disintegrate once you turn the machine on. From here, we like to give it kind of a full day to cure. Just make sure everything is dry in those threads and sealed. But really, as long as you do, I'd say like 4 hours, you can give it a test. But yeah, that's how to switch a boiler O-ring.